Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Real Football Talk. Today we have Cam with us to talk through the weekend games, the opening weekend of the Premiership. And we're missing Hassan. He's in the Midlands somewhere enjoying a wedding. But I would
Being
say he's missing out more than we're missing out on a wedding. I think he's missing out on this talk.
on the football, he's missing out on the important stuff.
Yeah, definitely. Needs to get his priorities sorted, I think.
Yeah, next week he should be back.
Well, a lot happened in the weekend. Obviously, we're still waiting for Manchester United and Wolves to have play, but some big games straight away. I mean, none bigger than the first match we're going to talk about, which is Chelsea versus Liverpool. There's lots going into the game, battles off the pitch before the battle commenced on the pitch with signings, transfers. Um,
Been a
so
crazy week.
it kind of hyped up the build up to this game, I think, and definitely, made it more interesting, the narrative. What did you make of the match, Cam?
You know what? I'll tell you before I go on about the match. It's been a crazy week for Liverpool and Chelsea. It's like there's this old rivalry just kind of sparked up again. I think over this whole Caicedo deal. Like we've never seen fans this heated before. And I think going into the game, I think the players were almost representing in that sense as well. You could see that Liverpool, I think, were throughout the game the weaker team, but I think the first 30 minutes, Liverpool was stronger. You could see that they had more control of the game. They were dominating. Every time they were attacking, they looked like they were going to score. I mean, it was inevitable that we were going to score. Obviously, we got the offside goal from Salah. It would have been another goal in the starting game of the season. But
Yeah.
unfortunately, not this year. We've missed out this year. Getting subbed off, he wasn't happy about that either. Understandably, I think when you have someone of Salah's quality, you shouldn't. No matter if he was having a bit of an iffy game, you can't take him off. I would have gone for a 4-4-2, put him up, and see what he could have done from there. But nonetheless, we got the goal, and I kind of felt like it was going to end in a draw. I was more disappointed in the way that we were attacking for the rest of the 60 minutes. I think the first 30 minutes we had good control, but the rest of the 60 minutes, I think Liverpool really let themselves down. It wasn't good enough going forward. But overall, you can't you go to the bridge, you will take a draw any time in the season. So if we are starting off with a draw, then hopefully the rest of the season we can just kick on from there. What do
Yeah,
you
I mean, I think there's a lot to discuss, really, to try to go into some of the details. Certainly, the Caicedo thing definitely added spice. You can feel amongst the fans, amongst the players, like you said, even the managers,
Yeah.
especially from club side, you can tell, you can feel. Um, Obviously, Caicedo's, if reports are true, saying he's rejected a chance to move to Liverpool. I've not really known of any player to say that to Klopp. He's so good. He is the best agent. I mean, he's so good at winning players and making the players want to come. And then obviously you have the Anfield effect as well, where players want to experience that and playing at Anfield. But
I don't
Klopp,
think I've spoken to him yet. I think the club's agreed. I think the the recruitment team, I think, had obviously bidded and put the offer in with Brighton. Brighton accepted it purely based on the fact that Liverpool have come in with a deadline and Liverpool met it straight away. But I don't think Klopp, by the time Caicedo and his agents had replied, had actually spoken to each other. So I think there's still a lot up in the air. We don't really know what's going on. You have some reports saying the bid is still on the table. Caicedo will still be happy to move to Liverpool, but then you've got, journalists like Fabrizio and other London-based journalists saying that he's set on Chelsea. They're just waiting for another bid. I mean, it's been almost 3 days now. We've not seen another bid from Chelsea, so we don't know where it's going to go from here. But I think Caicedo will probably end up at Chelsea. The salary he's been offered, if it is around the 250,000 mark, then I don't think he would reject that.
I
Liverpool
think I think
offered as much.
both things is quite surprising. Even if Klopp hasn't spoken to him, to rule out Liverpool
Yeah.
without even speak to them is surprising considering Liverpool in terms of trophies, challenging for trophies, and they're in Europe. It's surprising Caicedo would make such a decision. So that was a bit. That's a bit of a head scratcher, and yeah, it probably does come down to money. But you'd think a player of Caicedo's ability, would run to put footballing success above the
I mean,
money. It's not like Liverpool are going to pay him hardly anything. I'm sure he's going to be paid offered decent sum. There may be a big difference still between what Liverpool can offer and what
I
Chelsea
think with
can.
Liverpool,
But
we have a wage structure,
still a
don't we? And
surprise.
obviously, with him being so young and coming into the team, of course, he'll be integral. I think this match kind of displayed that Liverpool need a DM more than Chelsea need a DM. I think you can see that Chelsea with a DM would probably be stronger and a much better level. Because even just watching them play today, they seemed a lot more controlled in possession and out possession than Liverpool did. So I think if anything, Liverpool need that DM, that finalized DM that can come in and control the game. Because there was points in that game where you could see that we were stranded, we were empty, we didn't know what to do with the ball. I think with the Caicedo deal, it does come down to the money. I think Liverpool with their wage structure, they don't put new signings on big money straight away unless you've proven yourself, you know. He would have come in, he would have been probably put on about 120 to 150,000, you know, and had to work his way up with new contracts depending on his, achievements, maybe, and maybe his performances on the pitch. But again, I just can't see with the wage structure that we're offering, Caicedo choosing Liverpool, just purely based on the Chelsea, the idea that he will have 250,000. The agents as well, I think they're having a big say in what Casado's doing. And I think they're looking at Chelsea because they get a bigger payout from it as well.
How would you feel if you lose Lavia as well to Chelsea? I mean, that
Well,
that, that was even more surprising that even Chelsea are going for both. Sometimes you think they're going for Liverpool, the player Liverpool want to kind of make sure they don't, go for Caicedo and things like that goes on. Gamesmanship goes on behind the scenes. But now it seems like maybe both may be on the cards and in terms of what Pochettino wants. And
yeah,
yeah, obviously, other around Lavia has always preferred going to Liverpool all along in the discussions. They're always the favorite. So that's another thing that again up in the air, but also intriguing in terms of where both of those players end up. Um,
I don't think we quite know what's actually happening, but it looks like Lavia would still prefer Liverpool, and at this moment in time, Caicedo will prefer Chelsea. I know Lavia and at Liverpool with their negotiations with Southampton, they were singular in that the fact that they were the only ones looking to attain Lavia at the time. Now I think Chelsea jumped in with a bid, whilst we were pursuing Lavia. And I don't think Chelsea were going to pursue anything more than 100 million for Caicedo. And I think that kind of started off this whole bout between which DM do we go for, who do we go for, and why. And I think, I mean, it surprised all Liverpool fans when we went in for Caicedo because, you know, Liverpool were here not paying, the extra few million for, Lavia. But then they were saying it's not because of we don't have the money, it's because we don't value him that high. But then you go down the line with Caicedo, who is 2 years older, but that's 111 million, that they put on the table. That's a hefty fee. But I think they were willing to put it in for Caicedo, but now it looks like we don't know what's going to happen with that. And I don't think Chelsea get both. I think they've gone high with Lavia because at this moment in time they've not put another bid in for Chelsea. I think they're waiting for Liverpool to pull out. I think they're waiting for Liverpool to pull out. They go for Caicedo, we go for Lavia, and I think it ends there. I think the saga will end there.
yeah, so it's clear out of the signings, Liverpool would prefer Caicedo. Klopp would definitely prefer Caicedo. In his press conference, he kind of made that quite clear. Yeah, he'd prefer a midfielder like Caicedo over Lavia.
Mm.
I think, yeah, you're probably right. They're both now bidding to force the other's hand in terms of paying extra for the player that they're going for. Ultimately, Chelsea are probably having to pay £10 million more, so they're now probably trying to force Liverpool's hand in paying £10 million more for Lavia. It may be a tit for tat thing going on. Let's get back to the game. You've touched on quite a few points about the game. Obviously, the first half an hour Liverpool started. What did you feel was the big shift in momentum from that first half an hour where Liverpool looked, scintillating at times when they attacked,
I think
and
I think we had a good attack, purely based on the fact that we had more control of the game. I think the team came out with confidence, but I think as anyone would, as the legs got tired in midfield, we didn't really have that third midfielder. Gakpo was filling in less centre mid, and when you've got the quality of someone like Enzo Fernandez, he almost started running that game. Every time he was getting the ball, he was moving it about. He knew where to find the players. He knew where to snuff out the danger. And I think slowly, as Chelsea grew into the game, you could see that the momentum shift. I think we got that second goal, it got disallowed. And then they went and retaliated straight away. Then they got a second goal and it was disallowed. And I think there you could see that when Liverpool's got the momentum, I think you used a really good word, the momentum were great. If that second goal went in, we'll probably get a third. But where we lost that second goal and then they retaliated so quickly, I think we kind of dropped our head, we kind of let go. And then I think, I think Trent said post game as well, sometimes you get to big games and you have to just see out the game and get a draw. And I think that's what Liverpool were doing by the end of it. I think they were just trying to not concede. And I think that's what let them down.
I think my take is, yeah, Liverpool's attack is what we've always seen, and what was impressive was how clinical they looked in their attack. How quite a lot of new pass, players playing in different systems, and they still look, like they know each other's games. They play on instinct. So, yeah, that unpredictability in the way they attack, the variations of their attack is still there, and the balance. Clearly, everyone knew in the lineup was heavily on the attacking side. I think the first half an hour, McAllister tried dictating the game and staying more central. And then you can tell, and this is the Liverpool thing, they always go for goals. They always get carried away. They're not happy just to control a game. They want to score more. They want to, it's that heavy metal brand of football all the time where they want to press, and you could start seeing McAllister pushing more and more up, making more runs, which he was at the beginning, and players weren't filling in. And I
Yeah,
think the biggest shift was Chelsea really struggled at the start because they're playing Gallagher on the left hand side, and he was getting too drawn to that left hand side of defending, and you can see the system from today is Enzo is the one that's going to be free, and he wants the other uh, midfielder actually playing as a traditional CDM. So even
yeah,
though both of them take the position of double pivot CDM, one is given the license to attack, which is Enzo, and the other one is more there for the counter pressing.
yeah,
But that first half an hour, Conor Gallagher wasn't doing it. He was getting too drawn into the left hand side. Maybe that's because of tactics, maybe because of they're worried about Salah coming in and trying to
yeah,
block that option of Salah coming in. But what happened was Salah stayed really quite wide, like a traditional winger today, which stretched Chelsea back three, and Colwell was struggling to pick him up. So I think once Gallagher started to be more the CDM in the center of the pitch, suddenly they had more control.
yeah,
Suddenly had more, the numbers were correct in the midfield, and they started to dictate the game more and get the ball out wide and overload Liverpool to the wing backs at wide. So definitely, yeah, Chelsea made some adjustments. I think that helped them, made them dominate the game, and by the end, Liverpool needed to make those subs to kind of see the game out, because up until those subs, it was only a matter of time. I mean, it was wave after wave of Chelsea attack at that point.
yeah.
The actual substitution made it back into a slightly more even game. Um, so I think the substitution was more out of necessity of trying to wrestle some control and back into the game. And obviously, Salah's reaction is a big talking point. I mean, Luis Diaz scores, played well as well, and they both get taken off, and you got Salah doing that reaction quite, you
I think,
know,
like I said, I think he was,
openly.
I think it's okay that to take him off, but I think I would have kept him on. I just think when you've got someone of Salah's quality, whether he can assist or score a goal, I think you keep him on for the full game. Ben Doak, bringing him on. Obviously, it helped the team push forward. I think bringing Harvey Elliott on, it gave a bit more structure in that midfield because obviously Curtis Jones had now come on for Gakpo. I think overall, though, you could see that when you take off someone of Salah's quality, the game became really central. It almost became a battle in midfield. Konate and Van Dijk were pushing up a bit more. It did become a bit more even, but I think Chelsea still had um, the dominance over us. I think Chilwell and Reece James did brilliantly as wing backs. The reason I think they had a slow start is because they only used that three in the back or five in the back, however you want to say it, once during preseason. Most of the time, they were doing that 4-3-3 system during preseason. So I think that initial half an hour was the Chelsea players also familiarizing themselves with the system again, knowing that where to be, when to play the ball, where to be, and like Ben Chilwell especially, I think he was leaving too much space behind. I think he started tucking in more and knew when to attack, and then he started getting a bit more freedom because then our midfielders, almost like Gallagher, didn't know where to go and what to do when, and it really opened the game up for Chelsea. So I think Chelsea did a really good job. I think they could have easily won and they would have deserved to win. But I think a draw is a fair result because we had that iffy handball situation as well. And, that could be a penalty on any other day. It wasn't given, but debate would still run if that was a handball or not. I would say just because of the way he jumped, it probably isn't, but you see those handballs given sometimes.
Yeah, no, it definitely was a handball in my eyes. But I think taking away from what you said, is it safe to say probably Chelsea would be the more happy of the two teams and certainly seemed like that on the pitch in terms of um, the way they managed to wrestle control of that game, that it seemed like they're the team that came off a bit more confident with what they're doing rather than Liverpool, which seems like there's still more questions around how this is going to work. And that's the other thing is even when you look at today's game, um, you know, I don't know if Caicedo is actually the type of midfielder they need because he doesn't really stay CDM. He's more that Wijnaldum, that Henderson style where he likes to press, he likes to get stuck in.
But I think
Uh,
that's what we
I
need.
think I think Lavia or someone like that is more someone who actually sticks to the position and controls it a bit more. Obviously, he lacks the height and physicality, but I do think it's going to be intriguing either way. What did you make of the new signings? Just to finish up on quite a
I,
few new signings.
I think when if we talk about Liverpool first, I think you can see McAllister and Szoboszlai, they're good players, they're great players. You can see that they're tidy on the ball, but that relationship in midfield isn't quite there yet. There was times where I think they weren't on the same wavelength. You could tell that there was points in the time where the press wasn't happening at the same time, or the outlet, the pass wasn't there. So I think it might be a system thing. It might be, Chelsea's press was just that much better. But I think it will take a few games to actually see them at their best. You could see there was a bit of nerves with McAllister at first. I think he grew into the game. But to saying that, he seemed generally comfortable throughout the game. Then you look at Chelsea's new signings. One bagged the goal today. Jackson, he looked I wouldn't say nervy. I think it wasn't his best game. I think we're going to see a lot more from him as the season grows. He's not the type of striker to just stay in the box and wait for the ball. Not a Haaland type where he might just get a few tap-ins. Not to disrespect Haaland. I think what Haaland does is is great, and I think he's a great player. But I think Jackson is a bit more mobile. I think he tries to get involved in the game more. You could see him drop in. He's got the pace. At times it was frightening. They almost got a goal quite late in the game as well because of him. So I think he'll be a great player. I think them two they really kind of grew into the game. But I think Jackson will have better games. I don't think it was his best game against Liverpool today.
I actually thought Jackson was one of Chelsea's best players. I thought he had a really strong game. Really excited. Watching his movement, watching, like you said, his all-round game. He drops off, quite intelligent, commits defenders. He came up against two physical, centre backs, and he gave them a tough time. He had them, he worked the whole line.
Oh yeah, he did. Yeah,
So I thought he had a really good performance. The problem was he never had much support. I mean, Sterling was terrible today, and Chukwuemeka was non-existent. And sometimes it takes that, but at least he showed up and he showed a lot of quality in what he did. And maybe if he had better service or a bit more of a contribution from his two fellow attacking players, wingers, it might he might have had a better chance. But I was really impressed. Out of all the new signs, I was most impressed by him. His movement, everything. Just you can tell he'll score goals. Maybe
yeah.
the only question mark is his finishing ability because he had that one chance where he leaned back and blazed it over the bar. So
That happened. I think that happened. I think, like I said, I wasn't not impressed with him. I just think he'll have better games. And the only thing I disagree with is I think Sterling was actually one of the high points of that Chelsea starting 11. I think when he was on the ball, this from just a Liverpool perspective, he looked threatening every time. He was tied in the ball. He looked like he was taking a man on. Robertson was being eaten alive at one point. So I just think Sterling was actually quite impressive going into this game. Um,
I think Robertson was struggling more because he had a lack of support and there's more James causing problems rather than Sterling. But again, I get a point. I think other than one nice through ball, I didn't think Sterling did much. But again, right hand side isn't his. He always struggles on the right hand side, so I'm not sure if that played a difference. But in terms of link up play, understanding, I didn't see much between them. Complete opposite to what we saw with Liverpool, where McAllister, Sabazai, all of them are already integrated into that attack.
mm,
They're changing. You can already see that. I was quite impressed with Disasi out of all the defenders. Him and Thiago looked really solid. I thought Colwell struggled, but he's coming up against a world-class player in Salah, so that's partially understandable.
yeah, but
Uh,
Cole again, I think he grew into the game. I don't think he started off well, but you could see by again, I think it was literally that 30-minute mark. After those first 25, 30 minutes, Cole got a lot stronger. You know, he almost snuffed out any danger Salah had in the team. So, overall, I think Chelsea were really impressive. And I think one thing that will happen with Chelsea, with Poch coming in, is there will be a lot of changes in the team throughout the season. I think the starting 11 that we see now won't be the same starting 11 in a few weeks' time by the end of the season. I think there'll be a lot of changes throughout the season.
if there is one guarantee with Chelsea, they will keep signing players.
Yeah. There's more to
Okay,
come. There is actually more to come.
definitely. Um, let's move on. That was the Super Sunday game, but the league campaign kicked off on the Friday with the champions. Uh, at the end, what looks like a comfortable 3-0 victory against Burnley away. What did you make of that match? The company going back to his, club and well, not going back. Well, in
Yeah.
hosting
Yeah.
his club
Yeah.
and
There are turf more, but I get it. The gesture was, he was club captain for Manchester City, and now he's come back with a new squad, new team, essentially, isn't it? But I mean, was it ever in doubt? I kind of thought City would win comfortably. I think it's the management experience that came through at the end of the day. Not to say Burnley didn't have their chances. Burnley again, I think they're showing that they are going to be a strong team. But City were just and are a different class. And no one. I think everyone who put Haaland in the fantasy Premier League, there was no doubt about it that he was going to score. To score the first two goals of the season campaign. You know, there's nothing more to say. I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised Haaland was on the score sheet. I'm not surprised that Rodri had an amazing game. He is probably the best DM in the league right now. Some would debate in Europe. So, I just think it was probably a predictable, maybe not scoreline, but a predictable result for City against.
What did you make of Burnley's performance? Do you think, they offered any hope? For me, I felt like they played quite well outside of the goals. I mean, that first half, especially, I liked some of this. I thought Amdouni and I can't remember Ezo Sly or something. That they got. They both looked good. I thought, they beat the press quite well, and
Yeah.
see, it didn't easily win the ball back, but clearly, the defensive line and how deep they are. I mean, for both goals, how do you leave the most lethal striker completely free, literally on the penalty spot for both goals, or just, outside the 6 yard. So that's something that I'm sure company wasn't happy about. But in terms of performance, I was quite impressed with them. I
Yeah.
think they could do well. They need a striker. I'm not convinced by Foster, who's their main striker. He didn't really do much in the championship when they signed him late, and he hasn't shown enough. Like, I don't think he's got the finishing or the quality in his finishing, but he's clearly a physical specimen with pace and strength and power. But I don't think he's going to put away chances for a team that well create chances. They play good football. If it wasn't for a couple of crucial last-ditch tackles from Rodri, Burnley would have been clean through with a good chance to score. So definitely, yeah, and that's the thing with City. It's always inevitable. Without having to really go out of first gear, they always look comfortable. I think that's what Haaland gives them that when they're not having to dominate games, they still got a goal threat now, which probably they didn't have previous seasons. Um,
I would say they've always had goal threat, but I think someone as prolific and as Haaland is very hard to find. When they had Aguero, maybe he didn't fit the system to the way Pep wanted it at the time, because obviously at that time he had players like Sane and Sterling who were more, counter-attacking. He was playing more a possession-based but counter-attacking type of football. But I think he's adapted his teams over the last 2 years, where now the wingers are more possession-based. The likes of Foden and Grealish, they're really good on the ball. They might not be electrically fast, but they are quick and they're very good on the ball. They're very good at moving off the ball and on the ball. I'm very impressed with Burnley. During the predictions, I think they will comfortably either finish within the top 10 or just under it. I can't see Burnley getting relegated. I think Company has shown in the Championship that he is a good manager. He's ready for that step into the Premier League where he obviously has to prove that he can keep Burnley up. Now, Premier League, you get situations with teams like this where they are going to have times in the season where they're not that great. They might go through a few losses, so it'll be good to see and it'll be nice to see what happens when that happens, or if that happens, if they have a few games on the bounce where they've lost and how he regroups and gets them back. But I do think Company Burnley will be okay. I just from what I saw yesterday, Man City is a very difficult team to verse first day of the season. But Burnley looks strong. I think out of all the other teams, like the Luton Town and Sheffield, who you would say Burnley look a lot stronger than them too.
yep. Many people's predictions to mount a title challenge and be closest challengers to Man City. What did you make of Arsenal's winner?
Um, well, I would say Arsenal showed why they were so competitive last year. I think they They dominated most of the game. You would say they almost had control of the entire game. Obviously, being at the Emirates, they had the home support. It was nice, I would think, for Arsenal fans for Nketiah and Saka to score. And Saka, obviously, great goal. To come in on his left foot, keeper didn't even get near it. That's how good of the goal was. So I think Arsenal fans are really confident. I think as a Liverpool fan for Arsenal fans, I feel quite confident that they will be comfortable this season. They dominated most of the game. I think Nottingham Forest did come into the game a bit. There was worrying moments. It almost felt as if Arsenal were going to concede another one and could have ended in a draw. So maybe there are some question marks about defensively. Um, when the situation and the games get tighter or when there is pressure, say it's a better opposition, will they capitulate? Will they concede? If even if they're up front. We've seen it happen last year a few times. The signings that they've made obviously make them look better, but will they be better throughout the season? We can only find out. But they did like look comfortable. I'm not surprised with Arsenal winning.
I think probably they came up against a team that certainly in the first half was probably the most disappointing performance. I mean, Nottingham Forest, the performance in that first half was ridiculous.
Yeah,
Considering it's the early kickoff, your first game of the season, they literally didn't even bother turning up. They didn't press. They completely retreated, showed no ambition, completely let Aston kind of do whatever they wanted. And I do think that maybe um, makes Arsenal look like they had a better performance than they did. I wasn't too impressed with their attacking, other than Saka. It really did feel like a struggle, and the first goal came from magic from Martinelli. It was literally the first time he really got on the ball and started running at people. I mean, they weren't getting Martinelli into the game.
yeah. It
And
was it was
when
one
they
of
when
those
they did,
instances.
suddenly look what he does. He does some magic and creates a chance. So I do think I'm not convinced by the attack at the moment. The whole Havertz, I'm not sure. Didn't really see how that was working. They didn't really open up Nottingham Forest that much. But really that strike from Saka deserves to win any game. And yeah, there is a lack of leadership there. You can see it. Even when they're 2-1 down, stoppage time, you got Odegaard taking a shot from the edge of the box. They're feeling the pressure, see the game out.
Yeah.
These are the little things that you just think they just lack that leadership currently. That cold-blooded nature that just to see a game out that you can clearly see from Arteta on the sideline. I think that's why he's so animated and he's giving so much communication to the players all the time is because he maybe has that know-how and that killer instinct that the players don't have, and that's why he's constantly giving instruction. But nevertheless, you know, the top two did what they did from last season, and which is win and can't really complain about the opposition you face and how competitive they are. Ultimately, you're there to beat them, and they done their job. Um,
Only thing I would say about the Arsenal game was that you could see that it's the first game of the season. Nottingham Forest, they looked like they were still in pre-season. They didn't really get out and show much fight. Arsenal, they almost seemed as if, even though that they played better, I agree with you that it wasn't a strong performance. But I think you could probably say coming into the first game of the season, it can go one or two ways where there are mistakes in the players in the teams. You can see that it's not as free flowing as it would be maybe a few games into the season because pre-season of course is supposed to prepare you for the start of the season, but it's when you're playing those competitive matches that you really switch on. And I think we'll see a better side of Arsenal, but I think not Forest as well. I think this game will show them that they need to switch up, they need to wake up, and they need to start playing like the team that we've seen them be. They are a good team. They can put you on your backside, but they need to really push forward. And the way they started was very disappointing. I agree with you. I think they could have done so much better in that regard.
Yeah, yeah. There's a slight what did you make of the Arsenal systems? Again, everyone's going into that style of bringing the fullback, one of the fullbacks in. But Arsenal did it quite different from any other team in the sense that they rotated um, between Ben White and Thomas Partey in
Yeah,
the role of right back and who the second midfielder becomes. And what was quite interesting was when Thomas Partey went in, Ben White stayed at the back. They played like a traditional two defense midfielders. But then when Thomas Partey was at the back and Ben White went, he would do overlap like a traditional fullback. So they've done it in a way where they're trying to mix it up, which is interesting because no one else is doing it. They do one or the other. And yeah, Arsenal are the one team that's doing it already slightly different from the rest, where they're doing a variation of at sometimes if it's Partey staying as a back three. Then White is actually doing a like a traditional attacking fullback, joining in at on the outside. And if it's White staying in the back three, then Partey's stepping into midfield as a proper midfielder, and White is covering. So that's that was interesting to see. I thought in terms of a system because it'll make them a bit more harder to read
yeah.
and give them more options in their attacking because they can have the numbers in midfield or they can still attack on the outside with the overlaps from White. So that was quite an interesting variation. But other than that, yep, like I said, ended up being a comfortable win and maybe if Nottingham Forest showed a bit more ambition, we might have been able to have some more questions answered around how dominant the win really was, because it seemed like Nottingham Forest left it too late and they did cause a few problems, but again, not enough effort from them really to warrant and getting anything from the game.
Yeah, I would say that Arsenal did look comfortable on the ball, but again, yeah, they didn't give them enough to do. Me personally, I'm not a big fan of this change to this system. I think a lot of teams are trying to adapt and do their own style to it. You could see, like you were saying, Partey was the one drifting right a lot, and if it wasn't him, White was. Um, I think you could see that Arsenal had a lot of freedom, but they weren't utilizing it. There was many times where you could see Saka and Odegaard were in amounts of space down the right. You know, if Odegaard pushed left, him and Bellerin, not Bellerin, Martinelli were in amounts of space down the left. And I think the system is working for them because obviously they're opening up that space. But I think Arsenal were a bit slow moving that ball around the pitch. They weren't, they weren't moving the ball to those areas as quickly, even if it meant just drifting the ball out wide and then coming back in. I think the system might be working for them. I think obviously Arteta's adapted it to a system that it works with the players that they have around them. I wasn't too impressed with Declan Rice, but he didn't put a foot wrong either. I don't think there was anything to be excited about when it comes to his performance, but I don't think there was anything that you could say was wrong with his performance. I think it was just a good performance. But it will take the whole season to see it does he justify that price tag. You know, it was too soon to tell.
I,
But no, there was nothing special about that performance. I would say it was a comfortable win for Arsenal.
think with Rice, that's the surprising bit was he was playing slightly different role from the role he has had with West Ham, which was the CDM. This role, he's a lot more free to join the attacks, kind of do what Xhaka did last year. He was
Yeah.
pushing forward, pushing into the 10 position, slightly to the left. And that was quite surprising. Maybe they're trying to create a market for Partey, and it just feels like he's playing that role and will take the Partey role as soon as they sell Partey, and maybe they'll go for another midfielder, add another midfielder.
Yeah, it'll be
It
interesting to
feels like
see how they fill that void because I think with Partey, you could see that they are stronger with him in the team. And who do they bring in then to keep that position in midfield? 'Cause I think at the moment, midfield is a very good position for Arsenal. They are very strong. Yeah, and you can see even like Rice almost got a goal yesterday, so that license to move forward and attack, it will suit him well. But yeah, maybe it was
yeah,
more.
I have a feeling Rice will take that role if they do sell Potter, but I don't know. It might not even been on the cards, but it'd be strange to spend that much money and then try to play Rice as a slightly more advanced midfielder. Um,
Yeah.
it worked with Xhaka, but I think Xhaka always had, before he got converted into a strict CDM, he was kind of a bit more of a, box to box midfielder. Uh,
Yeah, I mean,
Decora's
Arsenal fans
always
will
kind
tell
of
you when
been
he first came
CDM.
to Arsenal, they were excited about signing him. You saw all the long shot compilations, you saw that they were really excited. And obviously, there was a moment where Arsenal fans couldn't stand Xhaka, but then obviously, over the last few years, Xhaka won their trust back over. So I think he is a big loss. Um, Xhaka obviously was ready to move on, and I don't think Rice coming in, it's not essentially like for like
Yeah,
replacement. So there is a lot to see with what happens for the rest of the transfer window or even January, what happens in January by the time we get halfway through the season.
definitely, and it does feel like that with most of the teams we're talking about that there are still changes to come. So that would be definitely something interesting to look out for. Let's move on to the other Super Sunday game today. Brentford versus Tottenham. Again, another game where I remember watching the this match in May. Was it in May or March? March time, where out of nowhere, Brentford literally blew the game up, and Burnley had a absolute storm of that game. So
Yeah.
I was really interested to see how this game would pan out. Both teams kind of in similar situation in the sense that they've lost both lost their charismatic striker. One through obviously a ban, and the other one through Harry Kane finally moving to Munich. So, what did you make of that match?
I think there was a lot for Spurs to kind of do. Losing Kane, losing that main man, I think there was a lot of questions going into the game, and I don't think they answered a lot. When you watch that game, you could see they were very tense, and there were moments that they seemed fine. They looked like they were passing it around, and you can see that they're a lot more confident passing it around the back, than they were before. They almost look City-like sometimes with the way that they're passing around. They're building from the back. You can see that's a system that they're trying to play. Romero, I think, was really, really good on the day. Even when Buemo and Wissa scored and they were like Brentford were coming back into the game, I think Romero was probably one of those players that I think he really took ownership of
I
the game.
think well, after Romero scored, he was taken off, wasn't he, with a head injury? So
Yeah,
I think yeah, Sanchez came on to replace him. But similarly, I was impressed with Van de Ven. I thought he looked really good in the defense. He snuffed out the danger, looked really good on the ball. You can see that pace. So yeah, there's claims he may be the fastest centre back in the league now, but
it
he
could be.
showed
You
it.
never know. You never know. Yeah, yeah. He seemed
He
really
did
quick.
show that turn of pace though. I was
Yeah.
really impressed. Even
He
Udogi,
It
I
is
thought had a
surprising.
good game.
It is surprising. He doesn't seem like he's quick, but he recovered and the pace that he showed on the pitch was amazing. What I was saying about Romero is I think after he scored and after he had the injury, I think you could tell that there was a drop off in quality on the pitch. That's what I say. I was highlighting him because I think as soon as he come off the pitch, I think that's when you could see Spurs kind of being opened up a bit more. And I think you know that Spurs team, they always had a talisman, and now I think they're looking and seeking to play in a different way. Losing Kane is going to be a big hit, but maybe it could be the best thing for Tottenham going forward. You know, it might allow them to change the system a bit more, not be so reliant on one player, and then have to spread and share the way that they move. forward in goals and assists, because when you lose someone who last season got 30 goals in the league, and still came second in the Golden Boot, it's a big loss. It's a big loss. Harry Kane, I think, is gonna leave a big gap in that attacking force. I don't think Richarlison is good enough to take that position, and I know Son, we didn't see the best performances from him last year, but being made captain now, I think we're gonna see a new Spurs. But then I say that, and then they ended the game in a draw, and there was times where Spurs looked really good. There was times Spurs looked like Spurs, and it was a bit disappointing, and they were a bit shaky, and it looked like at any point Brentford were gonna go on and win the game. So I think there's a lot of transitioning happening for Spurs at the moment. And if they continue to play like the way that they're playing, and it is successful, I can see them being a success. But it is going to be a big season for them, difficult season, challenging season.
I think there's a lot of promising signs today in terms of the football they played, how comfortable some of the players looked. You can see the tactical change. We just spoke about, you know, fullbacks coming in, but really the equalizer from Emerson Royal was from the same system
Yeah,
where, you know, and that's the thing that they're doing slightly different. They're doing it more the way Liverpool started to do it end of last season, which was Emerson Royal comes in as the CDM or the extra midfielder
yeah,
and Skip going off to the right wing, which was what they used to do with Trent and Henderson last season, Liverpool.
yeah.
But that was a bit strange because Skip going off to the right wing, I think it might be more because he's not as good on the ball.
Mm,
Might be to protect him. But he dribbles, tries to dribble out of danger. Saw a couple of preseason games where he really struggled in the middle with the composure on the ball. So, but that obviously that change did have a effect on the game in the sense of the equalizer. So you can see all the teams now doing it, and I think it's been accepted, and it's something we're going to see every team now do with their own little tweak. And
yeah.
that's the thing that I'm finding more interesting is there is a tweak to it. It's not just being done exactly the way Pep has done it
I
with
mean,
stuff. It's slightly different with different teams. That's interesting for
I
me.
think I think systems change all the time. We transitioned from an era of 4-4-2s to 4-2-3-1s where a number 10, like the Ozils, the Kakas, that became the prominent position in the midfield. Then we've moved and transitioned into 4-3-3s with the singular defensive mids. And I think we're starting to see another evolution of football with the three centre backs, the wing backs, and if not the wing backs, the right back or the left back coming in and becoming the second protection to the defense. So I think if not all teams adapt it, most teams will begin to use systems similar to this new 3-5-2 or five, in the back, because I think it does add a layer of protection in that midfield and quality in midfield when you have someone in a fullback position, or if the fullback pushes on and the midfielders stay tight in midfield, it adds a layer of protection, but it also adds bodies up front. It kind of creates a balance. And I know City have introduced it in a different style, and Arsenal are using their own style. Liverpool did it with Trent coming in as more of a playmaking centre mid. But I think you're right. We're going to see tweaks and different things happen with this new evolution of this 3-5-2, So it's interesting to see. I think it is very interesting to see how many teams do it, and maybe it doesn't work for some teams, and then they don't want to use that system.
It's essentially 3-4-3. Most teams are playing a form of 3-4-2, 3-4-3. But um, really, what's impressed me today about Tottenham were the new players, and I was, like you said, not totally disappointed in Richarlison. I didn't think they involved him enough, but I was very much disappointed with Song's performance today. He was on the periphery. I did notice a slight change there in the sense that they they and Postecoglou definitely kept both Kulusevski and Song really wide, a bit like the way Pep does with his wingers, where he makes sure they hug that touchline and keep the pitch as wide as possible. That definitely was the case in today's game with both Song and Kulusevski, where they really did not, and I think that's taken away from Song's game. Song's game is coming in off the left into that inside channel. And you see in the second half, he started to do it a bit. He got a few shots off, he got more involved. But I think maybe that's one of the reasons why he got taken off as well, because it's clear Postecoglou is building towards a system where the wingers stay high and wide and they
Yeah.
don't go into the inside channel. That's where he wants. In today's case, it was Skip going into that channel. But yeah, that's another thing worth seeing. I was really impressed with Basuma. Thought he was the player of the match. Really controlled the game. The one thing I noticed about Spurs was how impatient they were off the ball. I mean, the amount of fouls they did. Quite a lot of their players were on yellow card. They could have easily got a second yellow because they're just really petulant in the way they kept giving fouls away or just grabbing someone, dragging. So they brought a lot of players from the Italian league. You could tell that style of grabbing the shirt is there, and I think
It
they
was
were
a
struggling
physical
with those
game.
yellow cards.
It was a physical game. I agree with you. I think you could see even the likes of like Madison, you could see he was getting really stuck in, so maybe it's them showing their ruthlessness a little bit, and they were showing that they are gonna break up the play, they are gonna fight. But when they're on the transition, when they have the ball, they were playing really silky. Sometimes the football that they were playing was really good, and it impressed me. And I agree with you in what you're saying with Son. I think Son is one of those players that plays really well off the shoulder, getting in behind defenders. And when you push him out wide, almost to stretch the game, you don't see as much of him, and you see less of that quality that he has. And him coming getting subbed off is probably more of a statement about follow the system or you're off the pitch. It might not be more so about his quality, but more of a statement about this is how I want us to play. You're the captain, lead by example. And if you don't lead by example, then I'll have to sub you off for someone who will. And I
I
think
mean, I certainly saw it more as quite making a statement, and I noticed the difference in the second half where he was coming inside a lot more like he traditionally does. So I don't know if that's the reason. Definitely another thing, observation to keep an eye on. And yeah, Brentford. How do you think they did? What do you think about their season, their chances?
Brentford, I think they'll be strong again. I think it's a big loss losing Tony. I think Tony is a player. It kind of reminds me of like a prime Sturridge, who is so quick, so strong, so good on the ball. When you lose a player of that caliber, especially playing for Brentford, you lose a certain quality up front. But Wissa, he showed that he's ready to step up. He did show lots of potential last season as well, scoring goals and bringing in the play. But I think the setup Brentford have and the way in which they play, they will finish near about the same within that mid table. I think overall they were quite good. I think with Norgard is Christian Norgard. He does. You can see he's very vocal on the pitch. He dictates the play sometimes. He is one of those captains maybe that kind of like Henderson might not be, silky quality, but he demands the players to push themselves. So I think you could see that they were really strong and they they played to a system and they got themselves back into the game. It was unfortunate that they conceded as well and ended in a draw, but they look like a team that they started off the first game of the season. How they're gonna, I think, play most of the season. We saw it last year. They surprised a lot of big teams. I think they'll be very similar this year. I think they will show that they've got quality in that team.
Yeah, I think they will struggle. Any team will struggle with that with losing your main striker. They did lack a cutting edge, I felt, but in terms of competing, in terms of tackling, in terms of pressing and being difficult to beat. Definitely they will be up there. I was impressed with the performance of Rico Henry, left back.
Yeah,
He was the one player that looked like he was going to create something for them. Um, but yeah, I think they might struggle more than they did last year simply because of the fact that Tony's not there.
maybe,
But
yeah.
let's see if it did feel like they lacked cutting edge. Let's move on to the rest of the roundup. Obviously, we start with Brighton versus Luton.
I'll let you
Very
start. I'll let
difficult
you
first
start.
game.
I'll let you start on that.
Yeah, I think the scoreline was definitely harsh. In terms of yeah, I mean Brighton did miss some good chances, but so did Luton. Luton had plenty of chances too. In the first half, I think Steele had to do more saves. Well, it's quite similar in the halftime stats. Obviously you can't deny the quality of Brighton. They did that to top 14s last season where they were opening them up and
Yeah,
creating chance after chance. So that's nothing to be ashamed of. I was impressed with the performance. They didn't look out of depth. They didn't look like they didn't belong. The quality of the new signings were really good. Just disappointed in the naivety. The goals they conceded, the type of goals they conceded, is really real naive defending, elementary mistakes in the box. That's the disappointing thing. For all the good football Brighton played, they didn't score from those great moves. They scored from elementary basic mistakes, headering a ball coming into the cross, marking the one player in the box and headering it. The first goal it's an elementary mistake. The third goal, elementary mistake. Penalty, quite soft. But again, away from home, you're giving the referee a decision to make by cutting across with your arms like that, going across the face of it. So I think the scoreline was harsh. The man of the goals is more the problem because it showed real naivety
yeah,
in all of them. Even the one long ball and the fourth goal, across. So that is concerning because it's the first game and you're straight away showing a naivety in your defending. And it did feel like once the subs came on, the players dropped their heads a bit, which surprised me because the first game of the season. But in terms of style of play, Ogbin looked really good when he came on. The new signing, a lot of positives to take. The only downside I would say was I thought Anderson clearly showed his lack of pace and fear of lack of pace by dropping off too much, and that allowed Mitoma to be always on side, which caused problems. So there are little technical issues on that back line that definitely needs to get addressed. But on the whole, they certainly gave Brighton a game, and uh, Brighton had to defend, did struggle. The worrying thing was you could also see Brighton were not at their sharpest. Their pressing was terrible during the game. I mean, Luton found it quite easy to build up, and I was shocked because when we've seen Brighton previously, their pressing is amazing. It's really hard. They're one of the best at winning the ball back,
yeah,
and they didn't really do it, and they didn't do it that well. And it just shows you, yeah, they still won 4-1. And I suppose maybe with the fixture list, the way it's come out, they can maybe work towards getting into peak pressing this pressing system into peak. But definitely a comfortable win for Brighton. Uh, it well deserved, but yeah, the goals came more from mistakes than the good play of Brighton, which they did do during the game, but they just didn't put away those chances.
but yeah, yeah. So I wanted you to go first because I know you're so passionate about Luton. From my view of the game, I thought Luton showed their strengths, but I think you could see that Premier League isn't the championship, And if you're not ruthless in front of goal and if you're not ruthless in defense, you're going to be punished. And like you said, Brighton didn't have their best game. They didn't. But Luton, it was those mistakes that they were making. It's the naivety that you were saying. Luton almost they came in to the Premier League, and if anything, it was probably a chance to show that we're ready. Well, we're here. We're gonna give you a match, and I think they made a lot of mistakes, but that could have been nerves. It could have been the idea that it's our first time in the big flight, and it was a bit disappointing. Watching Luton at times during that game, I thought there was a lot that went wrong, and just watching the manner in which the goals were conceded, even that Welbeck goal, the way he got through and got around, I think the defending kind of just it was very passive. There wasn't enough aggression going into the game. And I was rooting for Luton more so for you and Hassan's sake, but I think it was inevitable. Brighton's recruitment and the way that they're set up at the moment, I think they're a really well-run club, and I don't even feel like maybe it was because of the type of game it was, but I don't feel like they were missing Caicedo in the ways that I thought they would. They look really comfortable off the ball. I think, as you were saying, the pressing wasn't as good, and you could see that quality in midfield sometimes lacks that final finesse, the finding that pass or pressing or tackling at the right time. But overall, you saw, the quality of Brighton came through, and that scoreline I think is reflective more so of Luton's mistakes and naivety more than Brighton's quality. I think Brighton's quality obviously will shine through regardless. And when you have players that have played in the Premier League now and they were very strong last year, it was always going to shine through. But I think Luton let themselves down. I think the way in which they performed really let themselves down.
I think yeah, I mean, like I said, at 2-1 the game was there. Luton were pushing back. As soon as the subs came after that steal, that off the ball work just completely went. It's a shame, but I think nonetheless a positive performance, um, uh, albeit with some naivety in the defending. But yeah, let's move on. I mean, the rest of the games also felt like they're quite similar, like quite close games or games of each half. I felt Everton's game was the same. I mean, against Fulham, they had the game for most of the 70 minutes and then kind of died out, and Fulham came in. Once they made their changes, Fulham took over. Felt the same in the other games where Bournemouth came on strong second half with a better team. Um,
The only things I would say about that Fulham game is I
games,
think you could see that Fulham, when Mitrovic came onto the pitch, it changed the dynamics a bit. He came in and he's such a big presence in that defense that they didn't know how to deal with him. And I know Fulham don't want to let him go, but you can see why. You can see why he come on and he was the game changer for them, I think. He grabbed the assist and he was a big difference. And Bournemouth, I wasn't surprised that Solanke scored. He was in good form last year. He's showing his quality. Bournemouth are showing the quality. I know you and Hassan tipped them to have a good season, and I think you guys are probably correct. I'm still not sure, um, but we'll see. I think they showed that they did push through and they still got the win. The one I really want to talk about was Newcastle and Aston Villa. The two teams that we put for that top seven. And then Newcastle completely just blew them out the pitch almost. They came in and they just demolished them. 5-1, 5-1, and you said it. Tonali was gonna come in, be a great signing, and wow, he set that midfield alive. Diaby, I know he got his goal, and we know that Diaby, there's more to come from him. But Tonali, he really showed his quality. He come into that midfield, and he was making those late runs into the box. He was winning so many tackles, so many aerial duels. Every time he was on the ball, he was so comfortable. He controlled that game like no one else could. And I think Tonali really impressed. He really showed the quality that he can bring to the Premier League.
Yeah, definitely a complete performance from Tonali. And what was surprising is how quickly he's integrated into the Premiership and into the team. He looked so comfortable. He got in. He's everywhere. He done the dirty work. He done the crossing, the passing, couple of raking passes to Barnes, and Barnes came on. Um, Definitely, probably one of the stand-up performances of the weekend for me. Diaby too was really impressive. For Aston Villa, he showed his quality. It was a shame that no one else really gave
Yeah,
him the support that because he stood out every time he got on the ball. He caused Newcastle problems, and they ended up putting like two players on him, and a lot of the times it became a physical battle. And he showed that tenacious side too. He was up for the physicality with Burns, and yeah, he looks another exciting signing. But maybe Aston Villa are starting to struggle with the amount of injuries they've got already, and the
yeah.
shame is a lot of them are long term. Buendia long term, Ramsey's long term. Uh,
Mings, that's another sign.
yeah, Mings look long term, and he actually
ACL.
he seemed like he was able to deal with the pace of Isaac better than Pau Torres, which they paid a lot of money for 45 mil, and on the ball he did look okay, but he looked like he struggled with the pace. And we know Newcastle are the team, probably we said it last year quite a lot of times, they're the fittest team in the league, and
Yeah.
you can see that there is no easy game. They will press you, harass you, be physical because they're the fittest team and they pride themselves on their fitness. So
You can
definitely I
tell with
thought Torres.
Newcastle, there's a grit to them. And I know there's a lot of big games where they didn't show that quality. They did a lot of time wasting and playing negative football. But these games, these let's call them mid-table games, these lower half games, where Newcastle are now the big team. They're starting to show that they're the big boys coming to you. You almost expect Newcastle to win. And considering that we tip Aston Villa to have a really good season, I still think they'll have a really good season, but Newcastle really put them in their place. They really showed them that quality. Another player that I'm really impressed with, and I'm gutted because he's someone I missed out on putting in my FPL and I should have, was Isaac, and he he comes in and he has again this presence up front. He's not one of those players that maybe is, dominating the game throughout the game, but you can't take your eyes off him because you give him half a chance, you give him a slight chance, in that box, around the box, because he's not the typical poacher either. He's running off the shoulder, he's coming out of the box. You don't know where to follow him. You follow him, you're creating gaps behind you, and Barnes, again, he was exploiting those spaces together. I think they were all working so well together. Tonali, Barnes, Isaac, they work so well together. I think it's quite scary to see what will happen throughout the season when the longer they play together, the more they understand each other's game. So yeah, Newcastle really impressed me.
Then certainly their movement was really good, and I would say definitely the performance of the weekend really
Yeah,
dominated. Most convincing performance I would say was Newcastle. Uh, yeah, I mean just to touch on Sheffield United, one of the new teams, lost 1-0 to Crystal Palace. I thought they played well, dominate the game. Other than Eze, Crystal Palace did look struggle, but they managed to get a stronghold in the second half and grind out the win. Again, I felt a lot of those games were quite close. The difference is that prem quality, isn't it? Uh, as he's just broken into the England squad, he is that got that extra international prem class, and there's a few other players there that obviously got that experience. It just shows that difference. Maybe with all the promoted team, that lack of Prem class, Prem experience just showed this weekend. I felt with all three teams. But yeah, definitely exciting weekend. A lot more to look forward to. Let's finish up on the Manchester United against Wolves and some predictions around that. And how do you think that's going to go for the Monday night football?
I think, United will probably just. I can't see them losing. That's all I'm saying. I think they'll win. I think if if they play anything like any of the top six, it might be a slow start. They might, be coming on, and it might not be their best performance. I don't think any of the top six had an amazing performance. So it might be similar, but I expect them to win. I think they'll probably win about 2-0. Yeah.
Yeah. I think obviously Wolves have had the big disruption of Lopetegui leaving just before the season start. Gary O'Neill, is a smart um, signing as manager because he's recently gone through a similar thing with Bournemouth during a turbulent time, managed to steady the ship. Um, it will change things, I think, and make it a bit more intriguing because the system will be slightly different. I think there's definitely more of a chance of a wing back system that O'Neill played for Bournemouth, and yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, I'd be surprised if it's not a win at Old Trafford for United. They had very strong home form. They did struggle against Bournemouth, Gary O'Neill's Bournemouth, in terms of dominating those games. So definitely, it won't be an easy game. Might not be completely convincing, but I think much like some of the other teams, they've got too much in the tank, I think, and,
I
and, and have enough to win the game.
yeah, I just think Wolves is going to be one of those teams that I don't know where the goals are going to come from. Defensively, they don't look the sharpest and best either. So, really and truly, just looking at the fixture, I think United, they probably won't even need to get up to fifth gear. I can see this being a comfortable win for them. Well, it should be a comfortable win for them. We saw like with City against Burnley, the quality that they showed that they didn't even need to get to fifth gear. They were almost cruising at times. I expect the same from United. I think they have strengthened over the summer, and I'll be very surprised if they don't win. If it ends in a draw, I think it'll be disappointing for United fans just because of the state that Wolves are in, and I can't see where Wolves go from here at the moment. I think, they are a team that will somehow manage to get by throughout the season, but this should be a comfortable win for United. I can't
Yeah.
see it going any other way.
Definitely, I think it's a game that depends on when United score. If United score early, it could be a long day for Wolves. Could be
Yeah.
really comfortable. If they stay in it, I mean, I still think United will win no matter what, at the end comfortably. Um, that wraps us up for this this game week one of the Premier League season. I know there's a lot of talking points. I think let's see some big fixtures next week too. So we look forward to that, and let's see how the story goes in terms of a lot of narratives being played out, and let's see how they develop as each game goes on. And
Yeah.
obviously, the transfer window still being open. Hopefully, we'll get an ending to the saga of who gets Lavia and Salcedo and some of the other signings. And I'm sure, Cam, you'll be hoping for some signings
I'm
of
hoping
any
I'm ho I'm
from
hoping for
Liverpool.
both Caicedo and Lavia and the left centre back, but I know Liverpool were only getting one. But yeah, no, I think the next 2 weeks are going to be interesting. Thanks for watching, everyone. Um, just make sure you like, follow, subscribe, comment if you can. Let us know if there's anything we could do better. And we look forward to talking about game week 2 as we get closer to the end of the transfer market. Thanks
Thank
for
you.
joining me today. We'll miss Hassan, but hopefully he'll be back with us next week as well.
Yeah, should be. Thank you.
Thanks.